Welcome to This Jungian Life. Three good friends and Jungian analysts, Lisa Marciano, Deborah Stewart, and Joseph Lee, invite you to join them for an intimate and honest conversation that brings a psychological perspective to important issues of the day.
I'm Lisa Marciano, and I'm a Jungian analyst in Philadelphia.
I'm Joseph Lee, and I'm a Jungian analyst in Virginia Beach, Virginia.
I'm Deborah Stewart, a Jungian analyst on Cape Cod. Today, Joseph and Lisa and I are going to take a look at a very, very old fairy tale. Some sources say it's as old as 5,000 years. And it's a tale that's familiar to everybody, and it's part of our psychic inheritance, part of our psychological DNA. And here it is, Jack and the Beanstalk. And here's the tale. There was once upon a time a poor widow who had an only son named Jack and a cow named Milky White. And all they had to live on was the milk the cow gave every morning, which they carried to the market and sold. But one morning, Milky White gave no milk, and they didn't know what to do. "What shall we do? What shall we do?" said the widow, wringing her hands. "Cheer up, mother. I'll go and get work somewhere," said Jack. "We've tried that before, and nobody would take you," said his mother. "We must sell Milky White with the money, start a shop or something." "All right, mother," says Jack. "It's market day today, and I'll soon sell Milky White, and then we'll see what we can do." So he took the cow's halter in his hand, and off he started. He hadn't gone far when he met a funny-looking old man who said to him, "Good morning, Jack." "Good morning to you," said Jack, and wondered how he knew his name. "Well, Jack, and where are you off to?" said the man. "I'm going to the market to sell our cow there." "Oh, you look the proper sort of chap to sell cows," said the man. "I wonder if you know how many beans make 5. "2 in each hand and 1 in your mouth," says Jack, sharp as a needle. "Right you are," says the man, "and here they are, the very beans themselves," he went on, pulling out of his pocket a number of strange-looking beans. "As you are so sharp," says he, "I don't mind doing a swap with you, your cow for these beans." "Go along," says Jack, "wouldn't you like it?" "Ah, you don't know what these beans are," said the man. "If you plant them overnight, by morning they grow right up to the sky." "Really?" said Jack. "You don't say so." "Yes, that is so. And if it doesn't turn out to be true, you can have your cow back." "Right," says Jack, and hands him over Milky White's halter and pockets the beans. Back goes Jack home, and as he hadn't gone very far, it wasn't dusk by the time he got to his door. "Back already, Jack?" said his mother. "I see you haven't got Milky Way, so you've sold her. How much did you get for her?" You'll never guess, mother," says Jack. "No, you don't say so. Good boy. 5 pounds? 10 pounds? 15? No, it can't be 20. I told you couldn't guess. What do you say to these beans? They're magical. Plant them overnight and—" "What?" says Jack's mother. "Have you been such a fool, such a dolt, such an idiot, as to give away my Milky White, the best milker in the parish, and prime beef to boot for a set of paltry beans? Take that, take that, take that. And as for your precious beans, here they go out the window, and now off with you to bed. Not a sup shall you drink, and not a bit shall you swallow this very night." So Jack went upstairs to his little room in the attic, and sorry and sad he was, to be sure, as much for his mother's sake as for the loss of his supper. At last he dropped off to sleep. When he woke up, the room looked so funny. The sun was shining into part of it, and yet all the rest was quite dark and shady. So Jack jumped up and dressed himself and went to the window, and what do you think he saw? Why, the beans his mother had thrown out the window into the garden had sprung up into a big beanstalk, which went up and up and up till it reached the sky. So the man spoke the truth after all. The beanstalk grew up quite close past Jack's window. So all he had to do was open it and give a jump onto the beanstalk, which ran up just like a big ladder. So Jack climbed and he climbed and he climbed and he climbed and he climbed and climbed and climbed until at last he reached the sty. And when he got there, he found a long, broad road going straight as a dart. So he walked along and he walked along till he came to a great big tall house. And on the doorstep, there was a great big tall woman. "Good morning, Mum," says Jack, quite polite-like. "Could you be so kind as to give me some breakfast?" For he hadn't had anything to eat, the night before and was hungry as a hunter. "It's breakfast you want, is it?" says the great big tall woman. "It's breakfast you'll be if you don't move off from here. My man is an ogre, and there's nothing he likes better than boys broiled on toast. You'd better be moving or he'll be coming." "Oh, please, Mum, do give me something to eat, Mum. I've had nothing to eat since yesterday morning, really and truly, Mum," says Jack. "I may as well be broiled as die of hunger." Well, the ogre's wife was not so half bad after all. So she took Jack into the kitchen and gave him a hunk of bread and cheese and a jug of milk. But Jack hadn't half finished these when thump, 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 the whole house began to tremble with the noise of someone coming. "Goodness gracious me, it's my old man," said the ogre's wife. "What on earth shall I do? Come along quick and jump in here." And she bundled Jack into the oven just as the ogre came in. He was a big one, to be sure. At his belt he had 3 calves strung up by the heels, and he unhooked them and threw them down on the table and said, "Here, wife, broil me a couple of these for breakfast. Ah, what's this I smell? Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll have his bones to grind my bread." "Nonsense, dear," said his wife, "you're dreaming. Or perhaps you smell the scraps of that little boy you liked so much for yesterday's dinner. Here you go and have a wash and tidy up, and by the time you come back your breakfast will be ready for you." So off the ogre went, and Jack was just going to jump out of the oven and run away when the woman told him, "Wait till he's asleep," said she. "He always has a doze after breakfast." Well, the ogre had his breakfast, and after that he goes to a big chest and takes out a couple of bags of gold, and down he sits and counts till at last his head began to nod and he began to snore till the whole house shook again. Then Jack crept out on tiptoe from his oven, and as he was passing the ogre, he took one of the bags of gold under his arm, and off he pelters till he come to the beanstalk. And then he threw down the bag of gold, which of course fell into his mother's garden. And then he climbed down, till at last he got home and told his mother and showed her the gold and said, "Well, Mother, wasn't I right about the beans? They really are magical, you see." So they lived on the bag of gold for some time, but at last they came to the end of it, and Jack made up his mind to try his luck once more at the top of the beanstalk. So one fine morning he rose up early and got onto the beanstalk, and he climbed and he climbed and he climbed and climbed and climbed until at last he came out onto the road again and up to the great tall house he had been to before, and there, sure enough, was the great tall woman standing on the doorstep. "Good morning, Mum," says Jack, bold as brass. "Could you be so good as to give me something to eat?" "Go away, my boy," said the big tall woman, "or else my man will eat you up for breakfast." "But aren't you the youngster who came here once before? Do you know that very day my man missed one of his bags of gold?" "That's strange, Mum," said Jack. "I dare say I could tell you something about that, but I'm so hungry I can't speak till I've had something to eat." Well, the big tall woman was so curious that she took him in and gave him something to eat. But he had scarcely begun munching it as slowly as he could when thump, thump, they heard the giant's footstep, and his wife hid Jack away in the oven. All happened as it did before. In came the ogre as he did before, said fee, fi, fo, hum, and had his breakfast off 3 broiled oxen. Then he said, "Wife, bring me the hen that lays the golden eggs." So she brought it, and the ogre said, "Lay," and it laid an egg all of gold. And then the ogre began to nod his head and snore till the house shook. Then Jack crept out of the oven on tiptoe and caught hold of the golden hen and was off before you could say Jack Robinson. But this time the hen gave a cackle which woke the ogre. And just as Jack got out of the house, he heard him calling, "Wife, wife, what have you done with my golden hen?" And the wife said, "Why, my dear?" But that was all Jack heard, for he rushed off to the beanstalk and climbed down like a house on fire. And when he got home, he showed his mother the wonderful hen and said, "Lay" to it, and it laid a golden egg every time he said lay. Well, Jack was not content, and it wasn't long before he determined to have another try at his luck up there at the top of the beanstalk. So one fine morning he rose up early and got to the beanstalk, and he climbed and climbed and climbed and climbed and climbed till he got to the top. But this time he knew better than to go straight to the ogre's house. And when he got near it, he waited behind a bush till he saw the ogre's wife come out with a pail to get some water, and then he crept into the house and got into the copper. He hadn't been there long when he heard thump, thump, thump as before, and in came the ogre and his wife. "Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman," cried out the ogre. "I smell him, wife, I smell him." "Do you, my dearie?" says the ogre's wife. "Then if it's that little rogue that stole your gold and the hen that laid the golden eggs, he's sure to have got into the oven." And they both rushed to the oven. But Jack wasn't there, luckily, and the ogre's wife said, "There you are again with your fee-fi-fo-fum. Why, of course it's the boy you caught last night that I've just broiled for your breakfast. How forgetful I am, and how careless you are not to know the difference between live and dead after all these years." So the ogre sat down to the breakfast and ate it. But every now and then he would mutter, "Oh, I could have sworn," and he'd get up and search the larder and the cupboards and everything, only luckily he didn't think of the copper. After breakfast was over, the ogre called out, "Wife, wife, bring me my golden harp." So she brought it and put it on the table before him. Then he said, "Sing," and the golden harp sang most beautifully. And it went on singing till the ogre fell asleep and commenced to snore like thunder. Then Jack lifted up the copper lid very quietly and got down like a mouse and crept on hands and knees till he came to the table. When he crawled, he caught hold of the golden harp and dashed with it toward the door. But the harp called out quite loud, "Master, master!" and the ogre woke up just in time to see Jack running off with his harp. Jack ran as fast as he could, and the ogre came rushing after and would soon have caught him, only Jack had a start and dodged him a bit and knew where he was going. When he got to the beanstalk, the ogre was not more than 20 yards away, when suddenly he saw Jack disappear. And then he saw Jack underneath, climbing down the beanstalk for dear life. Well, the ogre didn't like trusting himself to such a ladder, and he stood and waited, so Jack got another start. But just then the harp cried out, "Master, master!" and the ogre swung himself down onto the beanstalk, which shook with his weight. Down climbs Jack, and after him climbed the ogre. By this time, Jack had climbed down and climbed down and climbed down till he was very nearly home. He called out, "Mother, mother, bring me an axe, bring me an axe." And his mother came rushing out with the axe in her hand. But when she came to the beanstalk, she stood stock still with fright, for there she saw the ogre with his legs just through the clouds. But Jack jumped down, got hold of the axe, and gave a chop at the beanstalk, which cut it half in two. The ogre felt the beanstalk shake and quiver, so he stopped to see what was the matter. Then Jack gave another chop with the axe, and the beanstalk was cut in two and began to topple over. Then the ogre fell down, broke his crown, and the beanstalk came tumbling after. Then Jack showed his golden harp, and what with showing that and selling the golden eggs, Jack and his mother became very rich, and he married a great princess, and they lived happily ever after.
One of my favorite stories. Before we dive in to begin discussing this one, which I can't wait to do, I just want to mention to our listeners that if you want more Jung in your life, you could consider joining the Philadelphia Jung Seminar, which is now enrolling, and it meets 8 times a year on weekends, starting in September here in Philadelphia. So it's a wonderful opportunity. It's where the three of us got our start. It's where we met. It's where we trained. You do not have to be a clinician to do it. You could just be a person with a serious interest in Jung. I will be teaching one of the sessions in October. I'd love to see you there. So you can head on over to their website, which is cgjungphiladelphia.org, and take a look at the seminar.
Yeah, the syllabus is available. It's up online, so you can look at that too and let yourself be tantalized. So why is this tale purportedly over 5,000 years old such a perennial favorite? It always tickles me. And I think it is because it feels like Jack's original transgression and his daring and his pluck is rewarded. He does the wrong thing, the non-common sense thing. Oh my God, what an idiot would sell a cow for a bunch of beans. And then it all works out.
I think that this tale is, it picks up many themes. I mean, one of the themes I think it really elucidates is that kind of youthful transition to adulthood. But along with that, as you were picking up, Deb, there is this theme in this story about making room for the intuition, the flight of fancy, the impulse that doesn't seem entirely rational, and how important that is. And I think that, in some sense, if we want to think about it fairly concretely, sometimes there is a mismatch between a parent and a child, but where the parent may be very rational and the child may be a little bit more, let's say, a little bit more intuitive. And the parent's like, no, you got to follow the straight and narrow. And the kid's like, watch me. And then goes out and founds apple or something, But also the same dynamic obviously exists within each of us. And it's like, where do we make room for those intuitions? And I am leaning into intuition because I think that Jack is a good image for what intuition looks like. Intuition makes these incredible leaps, sees possibilities in places where other people don't see possibilities. And if you are a very intuitive person, and that kind of happens for you a lot, it can be a little bit painful because people do sort of say, oh, what do they say? It's like you got your head in the clouds, It's like, you gotta be more practical. I mean, I think I'm just going to show my hand right here at the top. This story speaks to me because I was that kid, and my parents were like, no, you have to be more practical. And even now in my adult life, I'm like, well, let's start a podcast. And, my husband was like,
that's a wild idea.
Why are you doing that? You don't have time to do that. I'm like, no, I want to do it, So the little bit of kind of shame that I carry around having these big ideas, and I'm just like rooting for Jack, that it's all going to work out. So I think that's just one of the themes, though.
But I like your illustration of adding a certain kind of, but I want to, and it's a really great idea, and it really lights me up, and I want to do a podcast of that. There is that element to Jack trading the cow for the beans. It's not a deep intuition that says, I'm really sensing a great truth here. It's like, that sounds cool.
Well, he gets excited about the possibility because the man says they'll grow up to the sky, and he gets taken by this kind of expansive possibility that doesn't immediately have a practical application.
Right. And that's what I think we all delight in is the kid with the crazy idea that works out. Or, a woman, let's say, who thinks of starting a podcast. There's a validation for the possibility the thing that doesn't make sense and going for it. And it's a delight. It really is a delight.
One of the things that strikes me about intuition as a function is that it has an innate understanding of possibilities, which is always so interesting. Of course, one of the problems is that we often don't have a sense of timeline.
Right.
So it's not uncommon, when I talk to young people and they're considering dating, or maybe they're in a relationship and they're frustrated, intuitive types will often date somebody or fall in love with them because of their potential, their possibility, but they have no sense of whether or not that's going to actualize in 1 year or 30. So they can wind up feeling vulnerable to the whole Chronos aspect of intuition. So Jack, just as you were saying, senses this potential in the beans, and beans are symbols of potential. I mean, they have things hidden in them that are not visible in the moment. And he trusts that. And the guy who's selling him the beans also is an interesting image, perhaps of the self, where he's gifted this extraordinary potential, introduces him to these 5 potentials. Now, it is interesting. I don't know why there aren't 5 beanstalks that grow up after they're thrown out, but something that is alien to him knows about potential, and at least he's able to recognize that.
I remember my children's book version of this when I was a kid. Like, the beans were like these beautiful colors, and they were so like tantalizing, and kind of I wanted to hold those beautiful beans. But yes, beans are a little bit egg shaped too, so they do really kind of carry this potential. Joseph, I love your point about like the timeline, like the intuitive can be like, I know that's good. I have no idea like how it's gonna actually actualize, but I can see the potential. And like I'm not kidding, but like I didn't even tell my husband that I was gonna do the podcast until like it was a done thing, because I knew he was gonna be like, why are you doing this? And he was. And then he said, you're gonna run out of topics in like 30 weeks. So my husband and I have a little bit of the dynamic in this fairy tale, which is actually good, because one does need to be grounded, and he helps keep me grounded.
You planted the beans before he could throw them out the window.
Yes, that's right. But actually, so to just start back a little bit in this story, because we begin with this kind of cast of characters. There's this mother, there's her son Jack, and there's the cow. So the cow is this huge archetypal image, right? That's often associated with the mother. Cows give milk, so there's this kind of maternal stuff, and the cow, we learn, stops giving milk. So it's a real image of kind of like psychological poverty. A cow that gives milk is a kind of a continual source of sustenance, but once a cow stops giving milk, all you can do is, unless you get it pregnant again and it starts giving milk again, all you can do is butcher it. And that's it. Like, once you butcher a cow, it doesn't keep on giving. So there is something here about the quality of the mother complex, which is, castigating and critical. And also there isn't a lot of generosity there. The warm maternal milk has stopped. And as a tale about the passage to adulthood, that might actually be important, because as long as the cow is giving milk, Jack can just stay there with his feet up under the stove, being comfortable. It's when the cow stops giving milk that Jack has to go out and meet his destiny, and he does.
And he does. And he doesn't meet it in a sensible, well thought out, pragmatic way.
One's destiny is never like that, though.
But I think it illustrates some of that the world of childhood, of the sustaining mother, milk giving cow, is over. It's another variation on you have to leave the garden, you have to leave the protected realm of childhood. You can't just be passive and be fed.
Right.
And he enters the world of transaction, of now the cow is an item that has a certain market value and or will be butchered. But as long as there's not really a relationship in a certain sense. It was a function. It was a provider. And then Jack meets the old man, the trickster, who sells, here's some magic beans.
But he's not a trickster, actually. He's giving him this incredible thing. But there is this idea of sacrifice, that the cow must be sacrificed, and that it's appropriate because it's no longer generative, that it might still require care and feeding, but it can no longer support the family in a generative way. And so the sensibility of the mother is, we have to sacrifice the cow, we'll take the gold, and then we'll open a shop that we're going to enter into the marketplace in the world of commerce, which is also kind of a developmental arc. It's like we can't just sit here and watch the cow eat grass and milk it, that now we've got to do something else. And in a sense, the mother is carrying or transitioning from the mother world into the father world, or trying to help Jack transition and introduce him to the world, which is a world of commerce and jobs and earning a living. So she's trying to carry that energy because she's a widow. There's no father for him to apprentice with, but a father figure, in a sense, is encountered on the road and gives him a potential.
And if we want to think about it, the beans are, in fact, sort of a spiritual potential, right? So this is the role of the father to sort of introduce the son to the world of spirit. The mother is so kind of earthbound in this case, and archetypally that is true of the mother archetype. But here is the kind of a father figure saying, look at the world of possibility. Look at the world of spirit. Look at the world not just of, how much can we sell the cow for. I want to say one more thing. I like what you said about sacrificing the cow. We could think about it in a slightly different way as well, which is the cow gets traded for the beans. If we think about the cow as a sort of image of the good enough mother, a good enough mother in childhood can lead one to the point where you can parlay that into an expansive life that includes a life of spirit. There's some kind of translation there.
The other thing that I'm just thinking about is in old Jewish tradition, there's something called midrash or drash, which is that you look at a piece of text and then you wonder about the missing pieces. So I find myself wondering about the ongoing life of the cow.
I was thinking about that too. What happened
think of the
to
same
the
things,
cow?
like, what about the
What
cow?
about poor old Milky White?
Went off with the guy with magic beans. What's the next stage of the life of the cow?
I have been stuck on the place with Milky White of the relational piece. Of after all these years, says Milky White to herself, this is what I get. I start to sort of age in place, and one day I can't give milk, and they decide to dump me. And then she gets traded. This man wants her.
Yeah.
In order to do exactly what? We hope give her a nice retirement.
We hope. Because she is kind of a pet. I mean, they've named the cow. It's not just the cow, it's Milky White. So Milky White has a personality, apparently.
So what do we do with that part of the mother principle that is just part of a transaction?
I like a midrash on Jack and the Beanstalk. What happens to the cow? Someone could write like a whole story about the life of the cow. What happens?
Exactly. It's like that book Circe, where an author imagined the midrash, drashed the life of Circe, the ongoing life of. We could write this, the three of us. We'll title it Milky White, turn it into a musical.
Oh, that's great. I love it. Okay.
Cats worked. Cows.
Wait, who gets to be Milky White?
Bunch of aspiring chorus boys dressed like cows, dancing.
I think it's a fine idea, Joseph. And moving on, but the book you're referring to is entitled Circe, and it's the retelling of a part of the tale from the Odyssey and Circe by a woman named Madeline Miller, and it is a great read if you're interested. Another sort of fairy tale equivalent, part of a myth, but go for it if you want.
Yeah, I don't think that our Milky White the musical is going to be quite as highbrow as Circe, but nor will it, win awards and become a bestseller. But in any case, so the next thing that happens is Jack comes home and
No, all I'm thinking about is everybody loves a musical. There's a musical with a magic cow.
I'm thinking about like moo, like in different notes. Moo, 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 moo. Like, how is this all going to play out? It's the beans, the magic beans have landed. And now we've sold the podcast to the guy on the road, and we're writing a musical about cows.
We have to do it.
How did we get here?
We're in it. We're in the fairy tale.
Right. This is totally the spirit of the fairy tale.
It's telos.
We're there.
It's our individuation path.
It's the constellated field.
Yeah. Meanwhile.
So, Jack comes back, and there are 5. Let's talk about 5 for a minute, though. There are 5 senses, 5 fingers. 5 is 5 points on the pentagram. 5's one of those mystical numbers that people think about. And I just wonder about the 5-ness of it. 2 in each hand, 1 in the mouth.
Yeah. So is it the fact that it's kind of a mystical number, is that part of what kind of underscores the fact that this is not about practicality?
Right. It's not a bag of beans or a pouch of beans. There's something so specific about the 5-ness of it. And again, my first association is with the senses. And he's talking about touch and taste. I'm just thinking about it. 2 in each hand, 1 in the mouth. The other thing that I would say about that is the hands and the mouth all, in a sense, are similar to putting them in the soil. They're dark and moist.
Yeah.
Like if you were holding your hand like this, there's a moisture in that. So he's already planting them, imaginatively in his mouth and in his hands.
The other thing that is 5-pointed is kind of the human form, right? 2 feet, 2 hands, and a head. So there is something really elemental about this, the 5-ness.
Also, many plants have 5 petals, 5 leaves. It's a very organic number.
Because it's a Fibonacci number.
What is a Fibonacci number?
Fibonacci. This came up with our recent episode on the Buddha brat. I was trying to remember it. I think it's you take 1 + 1 = 2, and then the sequence is
you add the last number to the previous number, and you get the next, and you add that to the previous. And it creates a spiral.
Right. Yes. And then 5 + 3 is 8, like that. And so you see like Fibonacci numbers turn up in nature all the time. And like you're saying, there's often 5 petals So it's part of the implicate order of the cosmos, the number 5.
And there's something also about the implication that it's precious because it's measured out.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a 100-pound bag of beans, in which case we don't have I guess we're going to cook beans or plant them. But when somebody is giving you something special and valuable, they don't give you a sack of it, generally speaking. They give you, a singular amount because of its preciousness. So I think there's something about that I think is signaled in the unconscious of the listener.
So I'm thinking actually of a dream that one of our dream school students had, and he very kindly let us use it in our book, Dreamwise. And I think it actually is a great amplification of Jack and the Beanstalk, or maybe the other way around. I'd never thought of this before, but so this young man was engaged in the performing arts. And then when COVID happened, that dried up, and he kind of told himself, and I hope I'm not botching the story too badly, I've got to get a real job. I've got to get a practical job. And then he had a dream that he was told to go down to the pond and kill one of the koi that lived in the pond and bring it in for dinner. And when he was killing this koi, it felt so wrong, and then it turned into this puppy, and it just was agonizing. When he works with the dream in analysis, what he realized is that koi fish are not food. They're not food. They're beautiful, and they're jewel-like, and they're mystical, and they're intelligent. They're not for eating. They're things of beauty. And so that internal voice that he had saying, "Get a real job," actually was leading him astray to kind of like kill the beautiful koi. Like, no, it's not practical to be in the performing arts, right? I mean, that doesn't work out for lots of people. But it wasn't right for him to sacrifice that. And by the way, he's doing fabulously in that field now. So the psyche was right. So.
Yeah, but there's something here that you're touching on of the dream, the possibility.
Right.
Of just kill the dream. We need to eat, bring the koi in. Magical beans, that doesn't make sense. Get to the market and start bargaining and negotiating. There's something soul-crushing about that there can be magic. And, just of stay with yourself and with what you hope for and where your calling is. And for kids, for our hero, Jack, we do all these things because we understand there has to be some magic in childhood. All the magic around the tooth fairy and all kinds of holiday magic, Santa Claus and so on. That we understand that kind of magic goes into a child's heart and psyche and lets them believe, like the young man you were referencing, of I can do something big. I could, at least I can try.
So by the way, the dream was so helpful to this young man. And it was great that he was a member of Dream School because because he was helped to work with the dream and understand it, and it became a real kind of guiding line for him. So if you would like to learn to work with your dreams, and I didn't do this on purpose, honestly, it just
but it's a good segue.
It's a good segue.
It sprouted. Yeah.
Yes. So consider joining Dream School. It's our 12-month online program that helps you learn to work with your dreams. So
trade in your unproductive cow and join Dream School.
Yes, it's just right. Right. Just bring us your cows and we will give you 5 magic beans. And you can check out Dream School at our website, thisjungianlife.com.
Actually, we'll give you 12 modules and dream groups and all kinds of things.
And live meetings with us. And yeah, so I just want to go to this point where Jack comes home and he's so excited, right? Because again, I've been there. I'm like, guess what? I'm going to do this. And then my parents are like, what? You're going to do what? He just feels like he has made a big, he's made a deal. He's done something great. He can't wait to share it. And his mother is really kind of crushing. She says, you're a dolt. You're an idiot. And again, this can be an inner dynamic. So you might have a really great idea. And then there's a part of you that says, oh, you're an idiot. That will never work. What are you talking about? And just beware of that voice, because sometimes those big ideas, they may sound a little crazy, but maybe they just need to sit for a bit, just kind of have a little space. And maybe you will wake up in the morning and think, yeah, that was crazy. And, I can't really do that. But who knows, So that interchange strikes me as really important that they have.
We just did an episode on the inner critic. And that Jack's mother, it could also be the birth of the inner critic.
Right.
What a dumbo. You did what? Oh my God. Go to bed, no dinner. So it's interesting that that's such a motif in stories of you have to go to bed without any supper, that's the punishment.
Withhold the milk.
Exactly.
But interestingly, she is also the agent that's necessary, because Jack, she could have said, go to your room. Jack puts the 5 beans in his junk drawer and it sits there for 25 years. That it's the fateful mistake, so to speak, and it's the frustration that casts the beans onto the fertile soil that nobody kind of expects. But had the mother principle not cast them to the ground, we would have no story, and maybe they would have all starved before anybody thought of putting the beans in the soil.
All right, the Felix culpa, the happy accident.
And in every version of the story, it's the mother who throws the beans out the window. That is so critically important. And if you want to wrap it around a slightly different way, I was talking before about my husband getting kind of frustrated at me with my crazy ideas, and I can understand why he sometimes gets frustrated, but I think I've encouraged him to sometimes have a little more imagination, but he likewise sometimes says, whoa, slow down. No, we are not putting a hot tub on the roof. That is just not going to happen, and that is helpful to me, to have that more kind of grounding voice being, sometimes it's dampening, but sometimes it's really important. And arguably, the impulse, say, to start a podcast, nothing would happen with it unless you put it in the soil. So you've got this great idea, then you do need a little bit of that practical mother energy to say, okay, what do we need? We have to buy equipment. We have to figure out this. We have to, set up social media accounts or whatever it is, So it's the both and. It's the way those two things can work together, that expansive, visionary, intuitive capacity, along with the practicality of knowing that you need to just get out there with your shovel and dig in the dirt, although these just land and grow. But there's something really important about that mother energy too.
And there's something important about frustration that is also central to the analytic venture. That one of the change processes that has to do with the calcinatio is that by frustrating an impulse and holding onto it in some fashion or taking it to ground, it allows the initial impulse to go through transformations and reveal something that was hidden inside of it. So frustration in general is an agent of transformation if it's held in the right way.
Yeah.
So the beans go sailing. Jack goes to bed.
And next day, guess what?
The axis mundi has sprouted in the backyard. The axis mundi is part of a mythic image that there's something that connects heaven and earth. And we internalize that in terms of Jungian psychology as the ego-self axis. But it's part of actually an ancient Kabbalistic idea that there is a structure that between the vertical and the earthly that one must learn about and learn to rise through on the Merkaba, which is the sacred chariot. So this shows up in this impulse, this mythic theme, that there is a secret and living path between our earthly life and the transcendental. And this can be shown by either going down or up, but it has to do with moving away from the surface of the earth to this other way of being.
I'm thinking about the ladder, that he climbs up it like a ladder. Just all of the tales and physical structures that give outward evidence of man's inherent desire to have a connection with the transcendent. Things like ziggurats and towers, and we go up. It's up there, the world of spirit that we mentioned before, and now he has a ladder, and they connect the realms. That's the image of here's how you connect the realms. And he climbs the ladder, that is the beanstalk, that is the axis mundi, that is the bridge, yeah.
Right. And I think it's significant that it's not just any ladder, right? It's a beanstalk, which is magical. Like, beans are ordinary. I mean, they're ordinary things. I've got pounds of dried beans in my cupboard right now, and they're so humble. The bean is so humble in a way. But as we spoke about before, it also contains these hidden things, and these are magical beings. So it gives you a sense of what it takes to be connected with that other realm. Yes, you need a sort of certain humility and earthiness, but you also need to have that ability to sort of believe in magic, if you will.
But we could even say that the whole beanstalk is a dream, because he goes to sleep and the fairy tale begins.
Mm-hmm.
So if this were turned into a movie, the last scene in the movie might be Jack rubbing his eyes and realizing that everything that just happened in the dream world. So there is this dimming of consciousness that happens as the axis mundi is activating, and then he's going to find this remarkable capacity for risk and adventure. And that's something that everyone needs, but boys really need. And a boy without a father could wind up clinging to his mother's apron strings. So she kind of kicks him out onto the road, which is great. Like, you go, I'm not going to go sell that cow. You need to go and learn how to sell a cow. But he also needs to kind of leave the kitchen. And it's his hunger that drives him, because that's the first thing that he asks for. Is like, I am hungry. So again, it's like, mom's like, I'm not feeding you. The milk is gone. And his hunger is part of the drive to engage the beanstalk.
That's exactly right. The theme of hunger that runs through it, that the cow that doesn't have any more milk, and then all the other things that transpire. And when Jack gets up there to the realm of the ogre and his wife, the first thing he says is, I'm hungry. Give me something to eat.
He's not afraid to ask for something.
Exactly. It's a very healthy response, or even a healthy regression for that matter.
Yeah, and he's persistent. No, come on, I'm hungry. Give me something.
So he's in that kind of crying baby place, but that's very much connected to his body and to instincts, which is an interesting paradigm, because he's in this mythic world, but he's also connected to his body, which is, bemoaning his hunger.
And he finds this other kind of mother figure, right, in the giant's wife or the ogre's wife. And she's not a good mother, but she's not a terrible mother either. She does give him something to eat and hide him in the oven.
Now that's a complicated symbol. You got a bun in the oven, eh? Like, is that a regression back to the uterus of the great and mythic mother?
That's something, he's being cooked in some way.
That's right. And like an infant is hidden, like a bean is hidden in the soil.
So I want to circle around this a little bit more because the giant eats little boys all the time, along with oxen and anything else. But there's something about Jack and the fact that he has arrived up there in the ogre's realm versus presumably the ogre going down to earth and just snatching up oxen and kids and anything else randomly. That also spurs the ogre's wife to say, "Okay, I will feed you and I will protect you." And Jack made it up there rather than what is down on earth. So there is something special about him, his ability to have spunk, to figure it out, to ask for what he wants,
Mm-hmm.
and to get up to the realm of what? An ogre. The ogre rules this territory.
Mm-hmm.
So he's, I go back to Karen Horney, who talks about, do you approach something? Do you go toward it? Do you push against it? Do you run away from it or hide? And Jack has demonstrated the going toward, the embracing of life, of his life, and the risk, ability to take risk. And that sets something else in motion, symbolized by the ogre's wife saying, "Here, pop into the oven, and he won't see you."
So he's going to heaven. His father has died. His mother's a widow. And then he finds this mythic father who, much like Saturn eats children, might eat his own child. But he's got to find a way in the spirit world to take his inheritance from the father that lives in the sky. Because all of those objects are potentials that were lost or went into the sky with the death of his father. And that explains a little bit of his entitlement, because he seems like a scoundrel in a certain way. He's stealing things. But there is a way in which a son does need to take something from the father for himself, which could be attitudes, capacities, traits, talents.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly when the father is not there, and here it's because of death, that the boy needs to then turn to the archetypal realm to discover what the father archetype can give him, because the living father is gone. And the archetypal father is mythically enormous and powerful and unpredictable and dangerous, because he hasn't been mediated by a lived father experience. And yet, this is where Kalshad talks to us, is when there is a poverty of something in the physical world, the archetypal world activates to give the missing thing.
And you're referencing Donald Kalshad, and we can put that in the show notes, a number of his books.
And Joseph, I really like what you're doing, sort of lifting up that this is the archetypal father. And the archetypal father, just to make it really plain, is the possessor of the great riches.
The negative father also has riches. And that's a great explication of exactly how this works, that Jack goes there and experiences this huge negative archetypal father. But on the other side, since it's archetypal, there's light as well as dark, there's good as well as bad, there's withholding, and there's our riches. How do you get the riches? Well, you steal them. You take them.
Yeah, you have to be bold.
You have to be bold. Sometimes you just have to take it.
And bring it to earth.
Exactly. And that the thing that is really wrong and naughty, you shouldn't steal, serves growth and development. It serves the soul.
So Joseph, you made that great point before. I thought it was a delightful image. He could have stuck them in his junk drawer, the beans, right? So that's one mistake we can all make. We can take our magic beans and stick them in the junk drawer, and then nothing ever happens. The other mistake we can make, which is what you just referenced, is we can go up to the clouds and not bring anything back down to earth.
Exactly. Which is a schizoid trait of retreating from the world, finding the delicious magical world. But the real fun thing is to go to the magical world, not to bring anything back. And this is where it's the Don Quixote complex. It's also kids that compensate for difficulties in infancy by it being lost in gaming. Or it's all lives in the sky, and often is a heroic tale of monsters and fighting and secret weapons. And then the game gets turned off and nothing is brought back to enrich the day-to-day life. So it's a great seduction, but Jack has enough connection to his hunger, to his body, like his belly aches. So just visiting the sky is going to leave him hurting if he doesn't bring something back.
He also did, in spite of our being critical of his mother, he also did kind of have a good enough mother, because he does bring it back to her, and that's okay. Just Deb, you started off by talking about how ancient this tale was. There's a little echo here, I think, of sort of a pagan worldview, because we have the Earth Mother, and then we have the Sky God Father, and most mythological symptoms, Earth is associated with the Mother Goddess, and the sky is associated with the Father God. The only one I'm aware of where that's not the case is in Egyptian mythology, the sky is actually a goddess.
And in, I think, Maori symbolism as well. But I want to lean into this idea, which I'm finding so fun with this fairy tale, about the idea of mediating the archetype. That when Jungian work was kind of taking off and developing, and this is subsequent to Jung's passing, that various schools of Jungian thought began to differentiate. And one school of Jungian thought, which was pioneered by a guy named Fordham, had this particular idea that inside of the child, all of the archetypes are present, and that as the child experiences certain things in the lived world, a part of the archetype breaks off or disintegrates. It comes into the psychology of the child, and then it blooms again, or sprouts, or resides, because the lived experience joins with the archetype, and then the archetype has a costume, has a shape, a feeling, a tone, and that over the course of life, but certainly childhood, bits of the archetype get put in. So this explains to me why the mother in the sky is more human, because he's had an experience of a mother.
Yes.
His physical mother is real, so the archetype of the mother has real components to it. So when he comes to the sky, he knows how to engage. He never really engages the father, by the way. He just takes from it. He knows how to talk to the mother. He knows how to make requests. She behaves in a way that's much more like his own mother. She's kind of rough, but she does make sure his fundamental needs are met, and he knows what to do with her. The father being absent, he doesn't have lived experiences of the father, so the father archetype stays strange and monstrous and inhuman, but full of life. And the monster is also, the ogre father, is hungry. He's constantly talking about hunger. And that's Jack. I mean, so there's this secret little echo going back and forth.
He eats 2 oxen for breakfast and a broiled boy on toast.
I love that.
My Favorite.
And that boy probably feels like he could eat 2 oxen, as a teenage boy.
I want to go back to the idea of the stealing, and that in line with all this of daring and going toward and facing the ogre father, it's very Promethean. Prometheus dared to steal fire from the gods and bring it to man.
Yep.
Take it from the transcendent realm and bring it down to earth. Then you can cook your food and have good things to eat. And in line with what you guys were talking about, if you have to bring it home to earth, and like you were saying, Joseph, which is very different from just gaming. What can you use out of that to feed your very real hunger, and that the physical hunger is a metaphor for our own personal growth and development? What do you really need? What is the nourishment that your mind, your body, your soul really needs? What's the food? What's the treasure? Where's the fire? If you're going to take it, make sure you're taking the right thing.
What's interesting is first thing he steals is the father's gold. And we often talk about the difference between dark shadow and gold shadow, that we all have these, like the father in the sky is this cannibalistic energy. I mean, that's a dangerous kind of shadow. But he also has golden shadow. So he goes up and he steals the father's golden shadow, but that's not adequate. Like we can we can live out our father's positive potential, but it has an expiration date. They spend it and it's gone, because it isn't the boy's masculine potential, it's his father's potential. So it becomes exhausted because he can't generate something that he's borrowing from the father. So then he needs to go up and he needs to find something that's living and generative. And that's something that he can do something with.
Right. The difference between the gold and then the hen that lays the golden egg. I mean, if you have a hen, first of all, I did keep backyard poultry for a little while, and like they are extraordinarily prolific, right? You go out and you collect.
That is a tragic story that you'll need to tell someday.
Yes, I know. Yes, it was very sad. It involved foxes and raccoons and hawks, and I think you can probably just imagine. But they lay almost every day. So you go out and you collect the eggs. So if you had a hen that laid golden eggs, you would have unlimited wealth, right? As long as that hen were alive every day. It's a really charming image, because it's a little bit like having a cow who gives milk. It is
upon command.
Yes. You just say lay.
It's like AI. It's prefiguring artificial intelligence. You go to your computer, you go to AI, and you give it a command, and then it lays a golden egg. And it does whatever it is you want it to write. But it's part of this fantasy that there's something out there that you can give a command to, and it produces upon command.
Right. I'm thinking of the Star Trek generator, it's like tea Earl Grey hot, and it just appears. But then the third gift is, or the treasure is the harp. So let's talk about the harp for a minute. So I'm thinking the harp, it's something aesthetic, but it's also something transcendent, right? Harps are associated with the music of the heavens. So it's something about, it's going back to our theme about selling the cow for, 15 pounds versus selling it for 5 magic beans. Because music in and of itself, and this goes back to our dreamer that I mentioned a little while ago, is not inherently valuable. You can't have it for breakfast. It's not going to buff the shine on your car for you, but it's something beautiful that feeds the soul. Music feeds the soul. Those magic beans feed the soul. So and we need both. The strikers in the mills in New England, one of their strike songs was called "Bread and Roses," We need bread, but we need roses too. Yes, we need sustenance, but then we also need beauty and spirituality and creativity and art as well.
Well, if we take the three gifts, the coins, which in the tarot suit are also called pentacles, which represent material concerns.
And there's the 5, by the way.
Right. And then I was thinking that there's the 4, and then the 5th is the quintessence. Yes, so the coin, I think, has to do with the body and the physical and the doling out and how they use it. And this, of course, satisfies the mother's fantasy because she wanted some money, and then they would develop a shop. Except that's not what she does, which is interesting. She doesn't take that bag of gold and go to town and set up a store. They just kind of spend it over time. She doesn't invest it. They just use it. The hen, I think, represents, because hens are feminine, also might represent the soul, the generativity of the soul. And then the harp represents spirit, because the music of the harp is not something tangible. It stimulates a subjective experience inside of us. So I think we have body, soul, and spirit, or we could play with it in that regard.
The very end of the tale, Jack does something so important and necessary, which is he chops down the beanstalk. And I think, again, if we're looking at this as a story about the transition from youth to adulthood, at some point in the beginning, we have to believe in the magic. But at some point, we have to be ready to give up the magic. And then we're sort of, living off the proceeds of the magic, as it were. It's a little bit, it's a similar theme as what happens in the story of the elves and the shoemaker. Is, the elves come for a while with the shoemaker, the elves and the shoemaker. But then the couple thanks them by giving them some clothes. And then the elves don't come back, but the shoemaker prospers. And so it's sort of like that's kind of what happens more in midlife, right? It's like you give up the magic. You have to give up the magic to really become an adult. But in some sense, that magic stays with you. You continue to benefit from it. It has changed you in a way that that leaves you with access to source and to liveliness. But you can't just keep on living in the fantasy realm of unlimited possibility. You have to so it's a little bit like, perhaps, you're 22, the world is your oyster. What are you going to go do? You could backpack through Europe. You could do this, you could do that. And then eventually you have all these adventures. And then you're like, I need to settle down and pick a career. And so you go to graduate school or get a job or something. And at that point, you're carrying all of that magic with you from those experiences. And those experiences have changed you. But you now see that you can't just continue backpacking through Europe. You have to get a job. That's chopping down the beanstalk. It's not going to stay there forever.
And it shouldn't. The other thing that we're looking at is that the relationship between the ego and the unconscious has to function in a very specific way. And if an archetype were to start crawling down the axis mundi and showing up in your home, we call that psychosis.
Yes.
So the ogre, the archetypal father, is responding to the cries of distress from his harp, is crying out for help. So the ogre is doing what a father should do, is he's responding to this call for help. But he is not something that should be permitted to survive in our backyards, in our day-to-day world. So Jack has to sacrifice this connection to the unconscious in the way that it was developing. And it became problematic when he stole the harp, the self-playing harp. Like, that was the step too far And then all of a sudden, he's at risk for this archetypal overwhelm.
It's a great progression, isn't it? That when he steals the bag of gold, there is silence and off he goes. When he steals the hen protests, cackles, and the ogre wakes up. And when he steals the harp can cry out in language, master, master. So each time the cost of the theft, the gift, is a little bit more expensive.
And Deb, to your point about Prometheus, the most Promethean thing that he steals is that harp, because it's something that actually comes from the transcendent realm. So, and if we're a creative person, if we write music, say, it often is like we just drew something down from the other realm that, wound up kind of coming through us. There is something Promethean about being an artist, because we've taken something from that other realm.
And so it's a whole question of how do we deal with the unconscious and with the transcendent? What is right relationship of ego and earth and body and senses to the transcendent? Because ultimately, we do have to live our lives here on earth doing all the things that we have to do, of getting the oil change in the car, not forgetting to pick up milk on the way home, that the gifts are to be used in the real world, in our daily lives, rather than just, isn't this great? I don't have to do a whole lot. I have this hen. All I have to do is say lay, and ba-boom, golden egg after golden egg. We have to develop agency and accept limitations.
Which is shown in the last sentence, which is so pragmatic. They show off the golden harp and they sell the eggs and they create a shop. They create a business. And then as a result of that, they become quite successful.
There is this kind of integration, right, of the Jack energy and the mother energy. And they're actually totally copacetic. She's not angry with him anymore. He doesn't seem to be like, "You old bag, I'm leaving you." There's been some kind of, and he does marry a princess, though, which is important, I think.
He does. Thank goodness, because it would be a problem if that didn't happen. But I also am curious, like often in dreams, and we can look at fairy tales like dreams because we think of them as products of the unconscious, that something happens and then a next thing happens. And we often assume the previous thing was required for the next thing to occur. So I'm interested again in this idea that the beanstalk is cut, but the ogre, the father in heaven, falls to earth, ostensibly right next to the cottage. And from the corpse of the father comes the next thing, which is the fertility in the physical plane. So that there is something about that, and I think we come back to the idea of mediating the archetype, that the father principle finally falls to earth. It looks inert in some ways, but Jack does become procreative, and he's able to be generative and find a wife and have a shop and become really wealthy. And although it was violent in the way the archetype fell to the earth, I think that is part of him having the father principle in himself and being able to relate to his mother correctly, and then also to go and have a life, of his own with his princess.
Yeah, what an amazing story. Just so much fun talking about it.
Our dreamer today is a 36-year-old male who works as a marketing consultant, and he titles his dream, "My Boys Destroy the Crucifix." And here is his dream. I am in a large amphitheater that is designed differently from a typical amphitheater. Instead of seats descending towards the stage so that everyone can see a performance, the seats in this amphitheater ascend up to a platform high above the seats. Because of the way the seats are arranged in steps upwards to the stage instead of down, no one can see what is happening on the stage. I find myself at the bottom of the stairs that lead up to the stage and know that my two sons are at the top. I start running up the steps while I hear the sound of a priest booming incomprehensibly over a loudspeaker. He is performing a mass for the crowd that has gathered. At the top of the stairs, I reach the stage and see, on a pedestal display, a broken remnant of the true wooden crucifix on which Christ was crucified. My two sons are chaotically tearing pieces of the crucifix off in splintered shards. I yell at them to stop, but they don't hear me or won't listen. As I try to prevent them from desecrating this spiritual artifact, I see my wife at the back of the stage. I call to her to help me stop my sons, but she leaves silently through a door in a hall there. Through this all, I continue to hear the loud voice of the priest over the loudspeakers, but I cannot see where he is speaking from. For context, he writes, I've been attempting to make a big career change to do better supporting my growing family, and the time commitment has been difficult for all of us. At this point, I have resolved to no longer pursue this path. I was raised Catholic and attended Catholic school until I was expelled as a sophomore in high school. However, I'm not a practicing Catholic and do not bring my children to church. Instead, our religious practices, when they do come up, are related to my wife's Jewish family. He says the main feelings in the dream were that he felt shocked that his children were being so destructive to this sacred artifact and that he had no control. To him, it felt like they did not understand it was sacred. He felt that he was alone in witnessing them do this, since neither the audience nor the priest could see what was happening. As for associations, he writes, at the time of this dream, my sons were ages 4 and 5. They are wild, to put it mildly, and are frequently destroying things and coming to blows with each other. Generally, they are kind, creative, intelligent boys, and the rambunctiousness comes with their age. I have not tried to impart any of my Catholic upbringing into them in any way. So people may know that at the Vatican, there's an enormous spire with a globe on top of it, and the tradition is that the single surviving remnant of the crucifix resides in this sacred space elevated above the Vatican. And I imagine the dreamer, whether he remembers it or not, may have a sense that this also has a factual piece, raised upon high.
I'm not sure about this, but I think that, those reliquaries all throughout Europe, I think others of them have like little splinters, like this is a splinter from the true cross. And, I remember sort of like joking at one point, if you combined all of the splinters, would it make like multiple crosses? Because it's obviously it's very difficult to authenticate any of these things. But yes, that this would be an extraordinarily valuable relic to have a piece of the true cross, right? In Catholicism, this would be pretty much the holy of holies. Like you said, kind of elevated and exalted.
What I often pay attention to first in looking or hearing any dream is, what resonates in me? What do I quickly and automatically respond to? What's the first thing that stands out? It might be an idea, it might be an image, it might be a bodily sensation that I feel moved or something. And in this dream, what I am paying the most attention to is the difference between our dream ego and the two boys. I know our dream ego, first of all, there's this very odd setup in the amphitheater where you actually can't see the stage. It's sort of like, what? Huh? What? Wait a minute. So I sort of play with that a little bit and literalize it, that I'm in an amphitheater, so there was intention here. There was intention in the way the thing was constructed. You have to buy tickets. You have to know ahead of time what it is you're going to go see. It's not going to be Bruce Springsteen. And then you get there and it's like, huh. But of course, as happens many a time in dreams, but it made sense in the dream. All people say that, and we've all experienced it. Of like, yeah, but in the dream, it seemed like the sensible, ordinary way of things. And that he knows his two sons are at the top of these stairs. And then there's the priest, can't hear it, performing a mass. And then finally he goes up, and it's interesting, he has to go up to the stage, which, often symbolizes something of at least an effort at some kind of transcendence, growth, development, whatever. And then his two sons, aged 4 and 5, where he says they're wild, to put it mildly. I'm thinking, yeah, they're boys.
Mhm.
That's what you've got here, a couple of bear cubs doing what little bear cubs do. And they're yelling, tearing these pieces off this crucifix. And here we have the tension between the dream ego and these other aspects of the dreamer represented as the two boys. That our dream ego is now sort of like, functioning as it would in the waking world of, oh my God, you can't do that, that's wrong. Oh, no, come back. Say please, say thank you. And the wild energy of these two boys destroying what is supposed to be an artifact that's on a stage that's almost inaccessible, can't see the priest. So what is going on here? And then the other element, the only element of the feminine, is that his wife is at the back of the stage, and she leaves silently through a hole through a door in the wall. That's what I'm kind of wrestling with, given the context of our dreamer's history, being raised in the Catholic faith. Of what about the boys? What about this crucifix? And what about our dream ego? What is Psyche trying to tell our dream ego?
So one of the places that I think we could go is to assume that the cross is not actually an image of anything having to do with Catholicism on a symbolic level. And the dreamer seems a little perplexed by that. Like, I'm not practicing, and we haven't taught the boys anything. But what if the image of the crucifix is the to use a different metaphor, the sacred cow, the belief, the attitude, the thing that you do not let yourself question, that you put it up on a pedestal, and then you just do not allow yourself to wonder, is that thing really right for me? And there are these boys who are doing this innocently. They don't realize what they're doing. Just this, the way little 4 and 5-year-olds will do. They don't know what they're destroying. So it's a fresh perspective. These little boys, it's untainted by these maybe these attitudes, these rigid attitudes that the ego has set up on high. But they're like, this is just a piece of old wood. Like, why do we need this here for?
That leads me to think about, what is it for, many of us that we import from childhood, where we, quote, know better as adults, but that something has been instilled. And I know people in my personal life who import the continuation of the old Catholic practice of not eating meat on Friday. Haven't been in a church in 50 years or more. it's a sort of a superstition or, some remnant of bowing to an old part. And that's what this seems to be like. I mean, if it's cross lying on the ground and two little kids could just rip pieces off of it, it can't be any kind of a true relic or anything of that sort. But for the dream ego, it still holds that kind of meaning of transgression, that you can't do this. You can't eat meat on Friday. You can't treat the cross like this.
I wonder what that might be in the psyche of this dreamer. And of course, I don't really know. But given the context, I wonder if it's particular attitudes about being a provider, about the kind of work he should do. That's the sacred relic that can't be questioned until these little boys come along and say, wait a minute, the emperor don't got no clothes. What are we doing?
What I'm thinking about is that he's in a time of change, and particularly that his career has taken him away from the family, and that he wants to reapportion his time. So I have to say that I think an overwhelming majority of men still carry or crucify themselves with the task of being the protector, provider, and that all other things are sacrificed. I'm not home. Maybe I only see my kids on the weekends. My sole task is to be out in the world, again, hunting, gathering, providing, protecting. And I think what he's coming up to is that is a kind of self-crucifixion. And it's also a residue, it's a remnant. So I think the vitality of his own sons, but also his own dynamic, young energy, really wants to deconstruct this idea of self-crucifixion or martyrdom. That martyring yourself for an old paradigm, whether it was instilled through his religion or through some other form of tradition, isn't working for him. And I think the dream is giving him a sense of the conundrum, which is the thing that's crucifying you is also the thing you venerate. And boy, I see that in the community of men, that, men are the sacrificial gender. We have a war. It's okay if all the men die. Men go out and work. They die earlier than their wives of all kinds of stress-related illnesses. And their children often don't know them. So if there's a divorce, the children often don't even visit their fathers because they were away. I mean, they have millions of memories of mom. So that's the one who they have the relationship with. So it's an enormous pressure. And if a man was to challenge that old paradigm, other men will go after him. That it is unseemly to not martyr yourself to the protector, provider role, that's unmanly. So there's a tension to venerate it, but there is a healthier instinct that really wants to just tear that down. We don't know what's going to happen next, what's going to be built. But to me, this is a deconstructing process. And where I think the sticking point is, if I had this guy in my office, it would be around this veneration of something that doesn't serve you. And he's in that process as he's changing careers.
And I think the bigger issue that you're pointing to is what really is sacred. What is really sacred? He says in his associations he was shocked that his children were being destructive to the sacred artifact. They did not understand that it was sacred. And they are doing what you call the deconstructing, literally, by tearing pieces off of it. And then I go back to the career change, and I think there's ambivalence there too, or ambiguity, I should say. he's making the career change to better support my growing family. The commitment has been difficult. So there's that sacrificial, I'll work 23 hours a day kind of paradigm. And then he says, at this point, I've resolved to no longer pursue this path. But which path is he talking about? We don't know. Is it the path of the career change and I'm hunkering down and I'm going to do it? Or is it the path of this kind of sacrifice and time commitment and absence from my kids is not worth it? We don't know. So I do see it as this tension between, what do I truly deeply value? What is really the right thing? Is it the old paradigm and the sacred cross? Is it, the kids destroying it? Or is it something else?
Well, we certainly wish the streamer all the best.
Oh, we do. Absolutely.
Thanks for listening. To submit a dream, suggest an episode topic, or join our mailing list, visit our website, thisjungianlife.com. If you enjoyed this episode, give us 5 stars and a good review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and make sure to click the notification bell to be alerted whenever we upload videos. And keep up with all things TJL by following us on Instagram, Facebook, X, and TikTok.